Hi, it's Harry Redknapp here. You're listening to a proper podcast. It's the Alan Hudson Podcast. It's proper football, proper talk.
Well, hello again. Welcome to the Alan Hudson Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We've got another great guest who's agreed to join us today on the podcast. Before we get to him, just to let you know, if there's anyone out there who hasn't subscribed to the podcast yet and you like what we do, all our retro shows, then please go to the Alan Hudson Podcast on the YouTube channel, click on the subscribe button, and that'll be great for us. Okay, let's get on with today's guest. It is someone who spent his time at both Spurs, but majority of his career was at his playing career anyway, was at Chelsea. And it is former Stamford Bridge favourite. It's Colin Lee. Colin, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Good to have you here, Cole. Good to see you. Looking well.
Yeah, aging well, Alan. I think.
Did I see you at the Ken Bates evening?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
did you have a beard?
Yeah, I've decided to get rid of that.
Yeah. Well played.
The grandchildren didn't quite take to it, and
you scared them.
Yeah.
It'll work well at this time of year, though. You could have done a turn of Santa Claus.
Yeah, I think so, but no, I think it. I don't know. I just tried it for a few months, and to be honest, it didn't really work out. So
it changed you completely, mate. Because we done a photo about 5 or 6 in a row, and I was looking at you, and I do apologise. I walked away, and I asked who you were, and they said it's going. No, really, because it was really bushy, and it really changed it.
Yeah, it wasn't really me, to be honest. So.
No.
I'm glad I'm back to the close shave now, out the way.
Yeah, leave that to people like Webby, mate.
Yeah.
Well, can we start off? I mean, I'm sure every time you get interviewed, people must start with the same thing. But I mean, you burst on the scene when you scored those 4 goals for Spurs in that 9-0 win over Bristol Rovers. I mean, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is my claim to fame, I suppose, in terms of people getting to know me, because obviously I came from Torquay United, the local team, and I live in Torquay now. We came back to Torquay, so it was my local team. Bill Nicholson actually picked me up from Paddington Station and basically took me to the club, and we did the deal. And the game itself was it was on Match of the Day, and that's how everyone got to know it. 9-0 and 4 goals on my debut, which was fantastic. And Ian Moores, who's sadly not with us anymore, got a hat-trick that day as well.
I was going to talk about it.
Yeah, the other scorers were Glenn Hoddle and Peter Taylor. So it was just one of those unbelievable days in my career, really, and the start of people getting to know me.
Dream, isn't it? Dream debut.
Yeah, it was a dream debut, and I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 now, but I think it took a long time for anyone else to actually score 4 goals on their debut, and I think one of them was Joe Royal, actually, for Bristol City. I think that was the next one, I think.
Yeah. Well, you've done something that Jimmy Greaves haven't done.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I don't think I can. I don't think I was in his class of goal scorer, but
well, it's some debut, mate. You mentioned Ian Moores. I was at Stoke with him, and he was a good lad when he was a nice lad.
He's a great lad. Yeah, an absolute great lad. And he was. It was just by sheer chance that we played up front together that day, because John Duncan was injured. Chris, what's his name? Chris Jones was injured, and Jerry Armstrong was injured. So there were no other choices. So it was me and Morsey.
Yeah.
And it just turned out to work out absolutely fine, because that season, believe it or not, we were in what is now the Championship, the old second division, and we actually got promotion on goal difference. So that 9-0 played a huge part in Tottenham getting back into the top flight of football.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So And what was it like playing with? How did you find Hoddle?
Oh, Hoddle was unbelievable. I
Yeah.
mean, I when I was at Bristol City as an apprentice, I ended up being loaned out to Arsenal because Frank Stapleton got injured, and I was a similar type of player as him, a target man, and they contacted Bristol City, and I went up to Arsenal, and we went to Barcelona and played in the tournament, and I played with Liam Brady, and Brady was absolutely magnificent. But I think that these are special players, Alan.
I played with Chippy for a year at Highbury, and he was, I had an argument with Ray Parlour one day over in East London. We was out doing this charity thing, and he was talking about the Invincibles and all that, and Bird Camp and everything else. And I said, well, I think if there was a survey, the greatest Arsenal player of all time has got to be Liam Brady. I said to Chippy one day, and he gets very embarrassed, and I said, I'm afraid that's the way it is, mate. Because he was, that left foot as well, there was so few and far, when you got a left foot like that, it was like Puskas, really. Incredible player.
Exceptional player. And Hoddle, I think Hoddle, for me, was probably the best player I've ever played with, if you were sat in the stand, if you were injured, sat in the stand watching the games, you'd sort of go outside left on. By the time you said that, the ball had already arrived there. His vision was just incredible. And obviously when they brought in Ricardo Villa and Ozzy Ardiles, Ozzy said to me, he said, if Hoddle was Argentinian, he would have 150 caps. He said because the team would have been built around him. That's how highly he recommended him, or rated him, I should say. Yeah. So Hoddle and Brady, in terms of midfield players, are probably the best two players in that position I've ever played with. Yeah.
Well, that's something that's a great experience, isn't it? It's to play with players like that. I'll be seeing Ozzy on Sunday. I'm going to the game Sunday, Tony, at Tottenham. Been invited by the people I'd done the thing for in Portugal, He called me last night, so I can just meet up with Paul Miller and Big Pat to be there. But
well, give Ozzy my regards when you see him, Alan.
I will. I'll tell the lads.
I haven't seen him forever. I haven't seen him for a long time.
Well, I had him as my wine waiter one night at a function in Manchester. I was calling him Manuel, and he kept bouncing back. And I put the little tea towel over his arm. I said, "Go get me some more wine, Manuel." And off he went.
Well, he would do. He would do.
Great fella, great fella.
Let's talk a bit about the short period of time when your paths crossed. Alan went back to the bridge in 84. And before we started recording this podcast today, you were both talking to me about the infamous pre-season at Aberystwyth in Wales. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I'd been to Aberystwyth a few times with Chelsea for their pre-season, and believe it or not, we used to stay in the hostel down there in bunk beds, and you were lucky if you had a room on your own, and if you did, you had a partner anyway. But it was just bunk beds, and the training consisted of mainly physical running, and they had the sand dunes, the dreaded sand dunes. Alan will probably know about this, but the dreaded sand dunes, they used to put up like a slalom run in the sand dunes. So you had to run up the sand, around flags, down, halfway down, get back up again and stuff like that. And then it always finished with a run along the beach. And I think Aberystwyth for me, and I'm probably wrong, but when you're running it's probably the longest run you've ever done in your life.
Well, after the sand dunes, it is.
And then you sort of, I can remember one day we were running along and it was pouring down with rain, and you have to jump the sort of barriers that are across the beach, So you're jumping over them, going along, pouring down around, thinking, oh my God, how much further? And then you can just about spot the the manager in the distance, and they look about I don't know, a millimetre tall, you know, because of the distance.
Yeah.
But as we're running along, and I can't remember who I was with, we're running along, and this jet went over the top of us, and it must have been, I don't know, practicing or whatever. And I've never, frightened the life. Everyone sort of stopped, you know, and this huge jet went across the top of us. But going back to the actual runs and the what was demanded of us, let's put it that way, it was apart from getting you physically fit, mentally it really helped you become strong, because you know what players are like. They don't want to give up. They're not going to give up. They want to do their best, and in pre-season you're trying to get yourself fit. But it was, I have to say, it was horrendous, and I can't imagine the players of today participating in what we used to have to do.
Absolutely, and I think what you just touched on, Carl, is the way the team I was only there for half that season, and obviously was never going to get a game because of the way they played it. You know, the long ball up to like yourself or Dixon or David Speedy.
Yeah.
But you could tell that them sand dunes come into play later in the season. You know, when the others were tiring. You know, they hurt at the time, but they're fantastic pre-seasons. I go back to 1970 when, you know, we thought it was tough, but it got tougher. It got tougher instead of easier. But now the season, obviously, they play all year round. Yeah, they would never see a sand dune or a run like that, would they? You know?
No, and I think, you know, with the modern way of fitness, if you like, and sports science, I don't think they dream of doing that. I think, you know, long term, it probably did affect us, you know, with injuries and various other things that happen. You know, I mean, I finished with injuries, and injuries affected my game, to be quite honest, you know, because psychologically, when you're getting hamstring injuries and various other stuff go wrong with you on a regular basis, it can affect you mentally. So psychologically as well, I was destroyed by injuries, really. And I think because at that time the training program wasn't really monitored that well, there was no sports science, you know, it was no hydration, dehydration. We just went out there and done it, didn't we? I mean, we enjoyed it. Let's be honest about it. And
we didn't know it. We didn't know any difference, Colin, did we? We know we went through the pain, and I mean, I've seen players, you know, in the earlier days with the people, like when you played with people like Tommy Baldwin and Charlie Cook, and you know, they've been down the King's Road. Not that I hadn't, but they've been down the King's Road. Ozzy, you know, it was Marvin Hinton. One day we done doggies, and he went green. He was green, and you know, this was the dreaded doggies. You know, it was unbelievable. But how it changed over the years, and plus the fact today, with the money in the game, they've probably got gymnasiums at home and bicycles and this that in their gymnasium. So they wouldn't need a pre-season anyway, would they? You know.
No, I think it's completely different. As you say, a majority of the top teams, you know, their players are international players and playing. You know, their main objective really is recovery at the moment. You know, the international players, certainly it's about recovery as opposed to, well, and recovery is part of staying fit. You know, and we never had that knowledge, if you like, and you know, when we finished a game, it was in the players' bar, have a couple of drinks, have a cup of tea at half time, you know, and all that now we know is dehydration. You know, we're dehydrating ourselves, you know. So yeah, the game has gone in a completely different direction to what you could even dream of, you know. But we enjoyed it, Al. You know, at the end of the day, we got on with it. We stuck to what we did what we were asked, and you know, going back to those memories, I can remember you coming in. Because you spent a lot of time with Droysy, obviously, and you know, Mickey. I mean, obviously thought the world of you, and you know, he was like, you know, I think he was your big mate, wasn't he, Mick?
Well, he was from I remember him first time round, Carl. That's why we got him from Slough, didn't we? From a game one night, and he was he was a hitman, Mickey, but Ozzy used to give him hell. He used to give him hell. He said, "Why aren't you kicking those people like we're getting kicked up front?" He said, "You're a pussycat." You know. And I think it wasn't until people like Ozzy left and Mickey was left to do his own thing that Mickey started to hit people really. And become a bit of a colossus. You know, he was a bit and he became a real decent player, didn't he? But in them early days with Ozzy, and I remember a time, I think we spoke about it, me and Tony, we played at West Brom one day, and Ozzy, our centre half got injured, and Ozzy went centre half, and he loved it. He kept going to them, go on, keep crossing it, and he was coming forward, and you know, and doing all that the other way round kind of thing, you know. But and I kind of took Mickey. He stayed with me a few times over here. We used to go to dogs together. He loved the greyhounds, and
that's right.
we had a greyhound together at White City. I mean, even that time in the 80s, it was still interesting. It's the longest I've ever spent in the reserves. 6 months in the reserves, but then Stoke come calling again, and I went. But it was a great experience, and I've got to say, although I didn't get in the team, you didn't expect to get in the team because they were like a machine, wasn't they?
Yeah.
They just steamrolled people.
We played a certain way, and I moved to the back, as you know.
Yeah.
And that was something that evolved really. I mean, I did play at the back in a couple of games for Tottenham, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that, but because I used to just slip into training sometimes and play at the back, and I think it was recognised that I could actually play that position if needed, you know. So, but I've played a few games for Tottenham, and I played one of the last games of the season for Tottenham against West Bromwich Albion, and I had to mark Laurie Cunningham.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I've still got the man of the match award at home today. So I did all right against Laurie, which took a bit of doing, but I did. And obviously, when I came to Chelsea, I came as a centre forward when Jeff Hurst signed me, and initially played up front with Curry, and then I was ill actually, following I think a game against Cardiff. I was ill, and that's how the Dave Speedy and Curry Dixon combination came together, really. I mean, I played up front with Curry against Fulham. I think we won 5-3, I think, in that game, and we played exceptionally well. I think I got one. I think Curry might have got an hat-trick. But not long after that, I was ill, and that's when Speedle came in, and then I was out with the team for a while, and then Ollie was playing right back, Johnny Hollins, and then John Neal said to me he felt that John his legs had started to go a little bit, and it was just he said, "Do you fancy playing right back on Saturday?" to me, and I said, "John, I'll play anywhere you want for Chelsea, and I don't care where I play. I want to play." And I said, "I played everywhere for you last year. I'll play anywhere." And that's how I ended up playing right back, you know. And, and the rest is history. We went on a 12 unbeaten run and got promotion back to what is now the Premier League.
Yeah. It's a pity you weren't about today because Man City are looking for a new right back.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
We're looking for a new team, actually, but that's another matter. Yeah.
I think did you also play a few games as centre half as well, Colin?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, it was the season prior to that where I can remember going to Oldham, believe it or not, and Joe Royal was their manager then, and I played centre half, and believe it or not, we were that short with players that I played with an apprentice, and I can't remember his name. If you look back, you'll find it, but I can't remember his name. And we did really, really well. I think Alan Mays might have scored that day, and I think we did okay there. And Joe Royle said to me, he said, "I think you could play centre half for England." I went, "What?" I said, "I don't think so." I said, "I don't know if I'm that good." He said, "Well, you've done well today." And like Alan said, because I was good in the air, you know, the game was played a different way. You know, it was crosses coming in, and well, that suited me down to the ground because I could head the ball and get it away, and if you like, manage the back four by getting them up quickly because I was the more experienced player at that time. But I played with an apprentice at centre half with me. You know?
It wasn't a guy called Mickey Bodley, was it?
That name rings a bell. It might have been, yeah, it might have been, yeah.
It's funny how the old brain cells work.
It might have been Mickey Bodley actually. Again, you'll have to look it up, but I know that it was me and him, you know, and I think it was Alan Mays that actually scored that day. I'm not sure the result, but I remember the game because it was me playing centre half for the first time.
So, what was your favourite time in the game, Carl? Your special time, apart from your debut at Spurs?
I think getting promotion with Chelsea, just being at Chelsea, you know, I loved my time at Chelsea. I didn't want to leave. You know, I would have stayed on and furthered my career coaching wise at Chelsea if I was able to have done that, you know, but that wasn't to be. You know, I asked if they could do that. I had a 2-year contract with Chelsea, and Brentford wanted to sign me, and Steve Perriman was actually the manager then, and I went to see John Hollins, who was the manager, and I just said to John, "Look, you know, I don't really want to go anywhere." I said, "But you know, I'm out injured a lot. I'm looking to go into the coaching," and I was helping with the coaching with the youth team at Chelsea at that time. And unfortunately, there wasn't a position for me, and I was offered a job at Blackburn with Don Mackay, who was a coach at Chelsea. He'd gone and managed Blackburn, and he wanted me to go up there and play. And I said to him, you know, I'd only go up there if I could become a player coach as such. So Steve Perriman offered me that position as a player coach. Went over there as youth team coach, built their youth policy. I'm very proud to say I think it's still the most successful youth team they've ever had in their history. You know, the player who probably comes to mind more than any is Marcus Gale was part of my youth team over there. And Marcus went on to play for Wimbledon and Celtic. So yeah, we beat Man United in the FA Youth Cup, and all these memories keep coming back now. You know, it's brilliant.
So this was at Brentford under Stevie.
Yeah.
We
had we had the start of there was a very, very poor youth setup there. You know, it was there was no centre of excellence, as you know, Al. You know, there was no centre of excellence, and it was a train on an evening type thing for the local lads and see if we can put a team together, that type of thing. So I made it into more of a professional setup where I had a chief scout who worked for nothing basically and went out and find players for me and various stuff. But what we did is we called on a lot of the clubs who were releasing players, who like your Tottenhams, like Watford at that time. So anyone who I noticed or was sort of I was made aware of, I would phone Watford, for example, and say, "Look, you know, I understand you were letting go of the boy Paul Buckle. Yes, is it possible for me to have his details? Blah blah blah." The other players were Kelly Haig was another player who was at Fulham, I think, and that's how I built the team. Really, that's how I built the youth team for Brentford. Got them in, gave them their apprenticeships, and then managed them through an apprenticeship. And really, from my experience of being a youth player, used all that to actually give back to the players who I brought in as youth team players at Brentford. And as I say, we beat Man United in the FA Youth Cup, got to the final of the FA Youth Cup. Unluckily, really lost to Watford in the final. But we beat Man United, and Bosnich was in goal. I think the other players were Sharpie. He was playing. You know, there was a lot of good players in their team who we beat. You know, so it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. You know.
But
Alan,
you played for Stevie in the first team at Brentford,
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, I
How
played.
did you find Stevie?
Well,
as a manager?
Stevie.
Yeah, I know. He's a great pal of mine. He's been on a couple of times. I love Stevie. I hope to see him Sunday.
Yeah.
I played against Stevie when I was 15. We were both in youth team, Chelsea, Tottenham at the Welsh Sharp, and we've got great memories. Where every time we get together, we talk about it. He says, "I can't remember that game. He can't remember the games that he used to get at the odd nutmeg, you know." But he can remember other games. But he's a great fella, and
No, he was.
I can't believe he never. I can't believe he never managed Tottenham. You know, I really can't.
No, I think there's a. I don't think he's a great lover of Alan Sugar. I think so. You know, I think there was a fallout there somewhere.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
There was then it would have been a fun other like the fella Levy or whatever. That would have been up to them to bring him back because he's a great favourite. Even with the players now, they still call him captain, don't they? You know.
Yeah, I mean, he was a great captain, and
yeah.
you know, I think I think it was a little bit unfortunate. Maybe the timing wasn't quite right for him, you know. And when he came into Brentford, it all happened when we went on I was asked to go on an exhibition play in an exhibition game, and I think it was over in Norway where he had one of his shops. I think it was anyway. And we all went over, Ozzy, Maxi, all the lot of us went and played in a game there, and we got talking really. He said, "You know, what you're doing?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm wanting to get into coaching. I'm doing a lot of that sort of work at Chelsea in between being, you know, playing and being injured." And he said, "Well, you know, I'm going to be at Brentford." And then the phone call came, really, you know, "Do you want to come over and join me at Brentford?" And I said, "Well, I'll only come, Steve." I said, "I've been offered a job to play at Blackburn, but I'd only come if I can be a player coach." I said, "Because my future is in coaching, and that's what I want to do. And I love coaching, you know, and I still do. I mean, although I don't do any at the moment." So anyway, that's how it happened. It was through playing in an exhibition game, which Steve was obviously in charge of, and it all went from there. And it was the start of my coaching, you know. And I played only about 20 or 30 games for Brentford, and played at the back. I played sweeper, actually. We played, it was big Terry Evans. You remember Terry Evans?
I remember the name.
Terry Evans was it was him and Bob Booker, I think it was, the other centre half. And I used to just sweep him behind him. It was so easy for me because they did all the pressing, if you like. And I just read the game and played around the back of them, you know what I mean? So
He weren't there, Herlock, no?
No, he wasn't there. No, he'd left by then. Yeah.
Well, that was. I mean, I was more aware when because Harris went over to work with Freddie Callaghan over there, didn't he?
Yes.
And then Webby went there and took Stan Bowles to do a bit of coaching for the finishes. Ended up taking him to the Greyhounds.
Steve said to me that I'll bring you in as player coach, but you must have your full FA license within 2 years. And I said, that's fine, because I was going to do that anyway, but it makes you concentrate and makes you get on with it, you know. So within 2 years, I was an FA qualified coach at the top level, you know. And there's stories around that, but that was when we were there, because it was all sort of structured in a way that this should happen, that should happen, and this should happen. And my coaching brain was, no, you know, you can't do that, you know. And I can remember one particular session where I think it was attacking in the final third, and I did something with a centre forward where he was in the box and it was played into him, and they had this thing about coming off on an angle, and I said, no, I don't want him to come off an angle. I want him to stay in the box. And I fell out with the coach, and I said to him, look, because I said, go and watch a few snips of Kenny Dalglish. He don't come out of the box. Says he backs into people and does that. I said, and that's what I'm trying to get over to my players. I don't want them coming off on an angle like you're telling everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut a long story short, in fairness to them, on the evening I got a knock on my door. Oh, the governors want to see you or whatever. And I thought, oh no, what's on the back of the training? I thought, no. They got me and they said, oh, give me your sheet. So I gave them a sheet, and they crossed off a few B's and put all A's and said, we've taken that on board. Thank you very much. And I thought, well, that's brilliant, you know.
Yeah.
So it was, and I've always been that way, you know. If I've got anything to say and I don't agree with it, I don't agree with it. And in coaching, I wanted to coach at the top level, and I nearly did. I nearly got an opportunity at Manchester United, believe it or not. But Steve McLaren got it. So, but I love coaching. I lived and died for coaching, really. And I'm pleased to say that I ran a coaching school down here for Chelsea for 6 years when I retired. Had to pack it in because I had to have a knee operation, but those 6 years were brilliant, and Chelsea supported it through the not the academy, the foundation.
Yeah.
And I think the foundation and the academy worked together, but it was mainly foundation. But they supported it financially did everything. So the kids down here had an experience they'd never ever get again. And I say, you know, Chelsea were absolutely brilliant, and we used to take the teams up to Chelsea, show them the best players, and then what we did is we got a link with Exeter City and Plymouth Argyle down here, and at Exeter we've still got, I think, 14 or 15 players who came through the Chelsea setup down here in their academy setup, which is fantastic, you know.
Yeah. Terrific.
Tell us a bit more about that United job you nearly got, Colin.
Well, I was obviously coaching at Wolves at the time, and Darren Ferguson, Sir Alex's son, was playing, and I think it was the time when Manchester United, Brian Kidd had left Manchester United and gone across to Man City. I think it was then. But anyway, Darren had obviously liked what I was doing in the coaching side of it. Mark McGee was the manager. I was first team coach, and Mark gave me the responsibility to do all the coaching and everything, you know. So yeah, I used to put together all the sessions, take all the sessions more or less. Mark would step in when he wanted to, that sort of setup. And I think Sir Alex used to come and watch quite a few of the games, especially if Darren was playing, obviously. And I think it was rumoured that Darren had spoken to his dad and said, you know, Collins, you know, he liked what I was doing, you know.
Yeah.
And cutting a long story short, obviously Steve McLaren was given the job, and the rest is history again, you know. So that's as little as I know about it, really. I was never interviewed or anything like that, but you know, it was good to know that the players actually liked what I was doing. You know, I was very strict in what I did, but I made it fun, and I, to this day, have never ever done the same training session twice. I've never done that, because as a player, and what I used to hate as a player was someone coaching and over talking, if you like, you know. So you stood there like an absolute lemon waiting for something and going, oh my God, you know, when's he going to shut up, sort of thing. And I learned that very, very early, and I never ever coached like that, you know. And I've always, when I've mentored coaches, which I've done as well, you know, I've always let them do their thing, not embarrass them in front of the group, which you should never ever do, but quietly, you know, you've over talked, you know, you might have spotted something, register that in your brain, but let the play go on, and then use that later down the line, sort of thing, you know. And that's how I've tried to encourage coaches that I've worked with to improve their coaching, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about it, the way you talk about it. So I mean, my son's like my son, who manages coaches in Qatar now, and he coaches the American national team and coached in America. I said to him one day, you got to make up your mind what you want to be, a manager or a coach. You can't do both, you know. And listening to you, he should take that on board, you know, either stick to coaching or go into management, you know.
Yeah.
And it's happened with, I don't know how Dave Sexton got away with it, but he got away with it. mainly at the end when he went to QPR with more experienced players, where he
Yes.
failed at Chelsea with us because, you know, he should have been I've always said that he should have stayed just a coach and let
Yeah.
we'd have kept Doherty and Sexton had taken over. And then I learned, and I was never, I'd never taken by a coach and never really learned anything or any ideas. I'd seen Venables' session. He puts on a great session, Terry.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got to Arsenal with Don Howe that I realised I listened.
Yeah. Don Howe's the best coach I've ever seen.
Well, I was gonna go on to ask who impressed you most, and I'm glad I mentioned, because see what the his great strength, Don. He kept everything so simple. Like you just said, he wouldn't bore people. He wouldn't bore the arse off people. He would say, "This is what we're doing." They get on with it. And anyone argue with him, there was no favourites, no Chippy Brady. Chippy Brady fell out with Chippy Brady. Told him what to do, behave yourself.
Yeah.
Chippy told him to fuck off.
Yeah.
And Malcolm McDonald, and he didn't take none of that. You know, he played with Stanley. He mentioned Stanley Matthews. He said, "Chippy, you should watch Stanley Matthews play," and it's keep doing the same thing all the time and that kind of stuff. And he was so impressive, and he saved my life at Arsenal. I was ready for the off before I actually walked out, and he came and brought a bit of sanity back into the club. But he was. I went to his funeral, and I said to his kids, I said, "You don't know how well respected and loved your father is by not only the big picture, but the small picture, the players that worked under him, you know." Tremendous. And I can, he would be the perfect coach to bring on other coaches. Yeah.
I mean, I was lucky enough to see him coach at a seminar at Derby County's training ground, actually, and he did a session, and Howard Wilkinson did a session, and no disrespect to Howard, but he was in a different league, you know, in a completely different league. And I'll never ever forget the session. I actually used it, you know, and it was a pressing session, but it was a session done with differently, you know, completely different to what I'd seen before. And I've used sections of it in what I've done with my coaching. But he was on, and everyone was sort of, I don't know, just fixed. His voice had something about him. His demanding of the players had something about him. And, you know, people say to me, like, you know, you're quite a quiet guy, like, you know, but when I get out on the training field and when I cross the line to play, I'm a different person, you know. And my enthusiasm for coaching is above anything. You know, I went into management not by choice, and I know exactly what you're saying, Al, what you just said, because I didn't enjoy management anywhere near as much as I enjoyed coaching. And there's more pressure on you as a manager because you're in the forefront of results. As a coach, my position as a coach and first team coach, assistant manager, was undoubtedly my favorite position, because I could express myself on the training field. I could work with the players together. I could talk to the players on their own if there was a problem. You know, those sort of things that when you're a manager, it's completely different. So I understand what you're saying. But no, Don Howe was top coach, and Steve Harrison was another coach who ended up coaching England with Graham Taylor there. When I went into Watford as youth team coach, I saw this guy coaching, and I thought, again, very, very enthusiastic, starting sessions in different ways. It was brilliant, you know. And Steve Harrison and Don Howe, in my opinion, the best two coaches I've seen in my lifetime anyway.
Yeah.
Colin, how do you think you would have worked with Alan Hudson in your team?
Well, you've got to analyze the ability of Alan, and I know how Alan played, you know, and you know, for me, you would feed him the ball as often as you could, you know, because he was a playmaker. You know, he was a link between the back to the front, and he was a playmaker. And for me, those players are the way that we always wanted to play when I was with Mark McGee was we always wanted to try and play through the midfield area. And you need a player. We had initially Kevin Dillon at Reading, who was at Birmingham, and then but together we signed Simon Osborne from Crystal Palace to link the play for us at Reading, and we were very successful at Reading. We went on, and Gary Parker was another one that we got at Leicester City when we went there. Mark Draper. These players are special players, and I'm not saying this is because Alan, but they're special players, you know.
Yeah.
And if you want to play a certain way, you've got to have that type of player. And it's a link player, it's a playmaker, I call them, and very, very important to the team. The way that we wanted to play, we had to have a playmaker. If Alan was around when we were around and we had a chance to get him, we would have got him, you know, because he was the type of player that enabled us to play the way we wanted to play.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the very beginning of the show, you've mentioned the two players, Hoddle and Brady. I mean, if you mention them as the best two players that you've seen, then you do know something about where you're going, you know, because there's a lot of the problem with English football, as you said, Ozzy Ardili said he'd have got 150 caps for Argentina. A lot could be said for quite a few, the Tony Currys of the world and whatever. And a few of the lads around then.
Well, I was amazed, Alan, and I've only met up with this player, and you'll know him, Mickey Fillery. And Mickey Fillery lives not far from me, Nick.
Does he? On his farm.
Yeah, over in near where is it? He lives in Chagford, actually, which is on the edge of Dartmoor. And I got a call from Mick one day, and he was typical Mick, like playing around on the phone. I didn't know who it was. And then he said, "It's me." And I said, "Who's you?" And he said, "It's Fillers." And oh God, where are you? And just by sheer luck, he'd got my number from someone who'd done some work for me, and he was doing some work for him. And I went over to see him. He invited me and my wife over, and we had a fantastic Sunday with him. He did all the cooking and all that, but we reminisced a little bit like we're doing now, you know. But I was really surprised that Fillers didn't actually achieve what he should have achieved at Chelsea. But he then went on to tell me, because I do a podcast with a couple of guys down here, and he came onto our show, and he was telling me how, a little bit like yourself, how Terry Venables actually changed him in his way of thinking, and when he went to QPR, and I didn't realise that, you know, but because Fillers was an exceptional player. You know?
Yeah, Colin, when I first come back from Seattle, I didn't know about Mickey Fillery, and I'd see the lads play on Chelsea at that time. They played Tottenham in the cup. I think Mick scored a blinding goal from free kick about 25 yards. I think Hoddle scored one. He scored one. Very similar. And then I knew I thought I was going to end up there, but you know, going downhill instead of going back to Stoke. But I was talking to him one day, and I said, "Look, you got to sort yourself out." You know, I said, "You know, Chelsea are going to get promoted, and the next season they're going to be in the first division, mate. And that's where you'll come into it. Because you've got to have a little bit more class in the first division, the old first division." And he said, "Well, QPR have come in for me." I said, "Well, you're only going there because Guinness sponsors them." And because he started to form weight, didn't he? And I went, "Mickey, you're only going there because of Guinness." And he went, "Shut up, buddy." He said, "How can you talk?" I said, "Well, I've had my days. You know, you're still top man." Him and Dal Jasper. You know, we could play in five-a-side, me, him, and Dal Jasper, and you wouldn't see the ball.
No, I got it.
Dal was
a good player.
Talented lad. But Mickey, you know, Mickey had that. I tell you, remind me of. I was talking to Paul Miller last night. he was talking about young players coming through, and I said, "You want to see this boy at Southampton, Dibley?"
Oh yeah, yeah. I
My
see him
God.
last week. Yeah, he's a good player. Yeah.
My God, I mean, first time I see him, I thought, "Wow, he won't be that good because he's too big." You
No,
know,
he's a good player,
for a
yeah.
midfield player, 6'1", 6'2", big, strong. And I said to Paul Miller last night, Tottenham want to get this kid, mate. I bet Manchester City try and buy him because they're in a mess.
Well, he was at Chelsea, wasn't he? He was at
Was
Chelsea.
he really? Yeah.
Yeah,
I heard he was.
and I think he was at Chelsea, and he didn't settle there, and they let him go, and he went back to Southampton, and that's where he is. Yeah.
Well, what an exceptional talent, this kid.
Oh, he's a
And
good player.
it reminded me, first time I see him, Cole, was I thought Mickey Fillery.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I
Big,
watched him
strong.
play. I watched him play last week, Dibley, against Liverpool.
Yes.
He was exceptional. Yeah,
Yeah,
exceptional.
terrific.
Yeah,
Terrific.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that the interesting thing about it is, I bet you'd love it now, but being coached now in the England setup, with now that Tuchel's got it, I think he's going to do a great job. Someone like yourself who loves the coaching so much, and you talk so much sense about it that, you know. Again, Donnell, keeping it simple, keep it simplistic.
Yeah, I think you've got to. I mean, I think every coach wants to play a certain way, but you have to develop a team to play that way, you know. And I think sometimes coaches go in. I look at the Southampton manager, and I know exactly the way that he wants to play, but unfortunately, he's causing himself so many problems.
Absolutely.
And the Liverpool game. Liverpool didn't score 3 goals. Southampton gave them 3 goals. And this is where you've got to get the balance right. And if you've got to play further up the field and use a different direction, if you like, and then play your football in the attacking half of the game. Because I look at Southampton, they're not bad. They play really good football.
But in the wrong areas.
In the wrong areas, And I think that, for example, if you overloaded one side and got the keeper to kick it on that side on an angle, and then worked on drop downs and then played your football he wanted to play, because at the moment they're going to get relegated because for some reason the coach cannot change his mentality on the way that he wants to. He wants to play perfect football with a team in the top league in the world. And he hasn't got the best players, and that's dangerous.
Well, you've got it. I mean, you're so right. You're spot on, and every one that comes on, and it's not being negative about the modern game, but the problem with them. I was at Chelsea one day about 3 years ago, and they played Bournemouth at home. Come in at half time. And I sat down on the table. I was in the Aussie suite, and I was with a couple of people that go every week, Chelsea fanatics. And I asked one of them, "What's going wrong? You're 1-0 down against Bournemouth, And they went, "Well," I said, "Let me tell you. I thought you might get it because we're sitting together, we're watching the game." I said, "Your back four have had most of the ball. Yeah. They pass it to each other, sideways. You've had more of the ball at the back than you have at the front. So how are you where you going? Because there's so much space. I mean, basically what you're talking about, Carl, and we know that it's easy for people to go deep and start knocking the ball about at the back, isn't it? Because there's that much more space.
Yeah.
But when you get in the other half, it gets more difficult, and that is when you need them special players to find them little.
Those little gaps and that.
I think Manchester City started, although they've won the league 3 times since, but they've started to lose it since they lost David Silva.
Yeah.
He was one of those players that could get it in the last third. Exactly what you're saying. You get the knockdown and get it to Silva in the last third, and he'd get it through them little things. But now Man City haven't got those players no more.
No, I think, and also what's gone out of the game is crossing, but I've noticed lately that some of the even your Liverpools and all that, they don't always play from the back, they counter attack very, very quickly. But sometimes they go direct and then get off of it. And I've noticed also that they're actually getting more crosses in, you know, and I mean, it really frustrates me when I watch the games and I'm going, go on, cross it, and then they turn back again, and then they turn back again, and then they turn back again. I mean, I watched the game the other day, and I think it might have been Manchester City. They had a great opportunity to put the ball in the box, and they've got Haaland in there with the greatest, you know, he ain't the smallest in the world. He's surely got to put it in there, you know, and by the time they'd made a decision, they ended up back with their goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if I was watching that game as a supporter, but as a professional like I did, I'd be so frustrated, you know. And
absolutely.
You know, I'd be a waste of time in that team because I thrived on crosses, you know. And you know, even the likes of, like, take Kerry Dixon for example. Kerry, you know, if teams pressed up high, we would go down the sides because he was quick, you know, and we used his strength to score goals. I just cannot understand why teams. This is why there's a lot of goals scored now also, and mistakes made from set plays. You know, because I don't think centre halves head the ball anymore. So let's put the crosses in. That's what I'm saying. You know, put the crosses in because they don't even head the ball. You know.
Well, we see that. You know, they're having a bad time, and everyone's going to be picking them to pieces, and rightfully so. Manchester City, I think Pep's brought it all on himself, playing with goalkeepers who want to think they're footballers. I've never seen one yet. Van Dijk had three clear-cut headers at goal on Sunday. No one near him. Gwendolyn picked him up once. Carl Walker picked him up twice, and he couldn't get near him. And it's exactly what you just said. You know, there's no defenders, no centre halves. That wouldn't happen in Chelsea in '70, in your team at Chelsea in the '80s with McLaughlin and Patesy. You know, and we had no one. Dempsey wouldn't have allowed him to do that.
No, you would never. That wouldn't have happened. No, because we'd have been up against him. You know, and all this. I'm not a great lover of this. You know, they don't really mark man for man anymore. You know.
No.
You know, and I'm not a great lover of that. I think you've got to. You know, we were given responsibility. You mark him, and if he scores, it's your fault. So it was easy. You know.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't mark space, we didn't mark fresh air, you know, and I found that easy because, I used to love going up against people, and defending against people and attacking against people. But no, the game, as you say, the game's changed, and up until now, I think obviously Manchester City have been the team to watch and everything else, but I think also, Alan, we got to, if you look at it, you've got to make sure that your recruitment strategy is correct as well, and one of the best managers for me going back quite a long time was Bill Shankly, and Bill Shankly inherited a team at Liverpool and then evolved that team. But and I've listened to a lot of his interviews and various other stuff, which I use for a lot of reasons when I was managing and coaching, and he actually started to replace players and no one actually noticed it, because there wasn't like today, if someone signs a players everywhere, but in his day the team changed and no one actually realized it was changing. But what he realized that was certain players were falling behind his level, if you like, so therefore I've got to look at bringing a new player in, and he had a system in place which allowed him to do that. And I think if you look at the history of Liverpool and how they became successful for such a long period of time, a lot of that was down to recruitment and the way that he managed that. And it's a fantastic. He was so far ahead of his time, Bill Shankly.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's funny you should bring it up because only this morning, I've been writing this morning. There was a thing on LinkedIn or something. Someone sent a message about Ray Kennedy.
Yes.
I went up to see Ray when he had Parkinson's. I went up to try and help him out to do something for him when I was involved with this company, and it was horrendous. It's terrible. But what he had, I had to come away. I felt ill. It made me feel ill. I love Ray Kennedy. And exactly what you're talking about. They bought him from Arsenal, Liverpool, and they turned him to a midfield player.
Yeah, that's right.
And nobody really noticed. Nobody really noticed. Ray Kennedy played. They had the two front men, and Ray Kennedy and I played against him for Arsenal up there, and you wouldn't know what he was doing, but he would pop up everywhere, and he was still as effective. Exactly what you're saying. It's like a little jigsaw for them, you know.
Yeah, Shankly was a top manager, and as I say, I think that Pep's not quite got that right. You know, if you think about it, how many centre forwards has Man City got? They got one. But that can't be right, you know, because he let the boy go to Arsenal, and I think the other one went abroad and played. He hasn't got another centre forward. So if Haaland was to get injured, and I know that Haaland, I've read in certain papers that he's been playing with a slight injury, but if so, he can't rest him. He ain't got another centre forward. You know?
Yeah.
And that's not good.
He's left himself very short all over the place. We while we're on Man City, we all know that Rodri's been a great miss for them, but that happens. You know, Arsenal have lost the league this year because Odegaard missed so many games. You know, otherwise they would have been right up. They would have been in the lead now, in front of him. But Odegaard, he's come back. All of a sudden, they started hitting 4 and 5 now.
Yeah.
What a player this kid is, you know. And you can't lose players like that when you rely on them so much, getting the team to play these special midfield players we've been talking about. But I'm afraid it's easy to jump on the bandwagon, but
I agree. Yeah, we're really discussing, you know, why has it happened, and you know what maybe could have been done prior to preventing it from happening. Really, that's what we're talking about. We're not anywhere near Pep's sort of. What he's achieved is incredible, you know. But I think it is the discussion point, and I think you have to sometimes look at history of what's happened to the best teams historically, and we're looking at Liverpool, who were undoubtedly the best team during Shankly's period and more, and they didn't allow that to happen or tried to prevent that from happening because their recruitment strategy was different, if you like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you can even tell the difference with Liverpool now. While you were talking about you playing up front and you get the ump about when they're not putting the ball in the box. The little time, there was a period when Klopp with Liverpool had the two fullbacks playing virtually as wingers. And they didn't hesitate to get the crosses in.
No.
They never turned back once. Never. Trent Alexander-Robertson, they never turned back once, and they must have spent all day just crossing balls in training, and it was unbelievable, you know. And they've got 3 front men who are all about 5'9". You know, the great Mane, and you know, Salah was playing at the time, but Mane was better than the lot. I thought he was better. I think it was the main person. I think he led from the front and, you know, hit people and was a great player. But even though they were great at that, they don't do that no more.
No,
they've even played, you know, them fullbacks don't bunk on as much now. I mean, Salah's playing like an out right winger.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you know, but it still works for them.
Yeah, I mean, you could go back to Chelsea, you know, with who was it? Iron Robin and Damien Duff. Yeah, I mean, I used to did the commentary for the away games during the promotion season. The title season when they first won the title.
Yeah,
I think it was at Blackburn away. Was it when
Bolton?
Bolton away. That's right. Well, I was commentating on that game. I used to do the away games, and Kerry did the home games. Kerry Dixon, and that season was all about wingers, wasn't it? Let's be honest about it. You know, and those two were exceptional. You know,
they were exceptional. But we funnily enough, we picked an all-time Chelsea team the other week, and Robin had to be in every time. Robin was.
Yeah, he was a great player.
He was a wizard, wasn't he? You know. There's not many of him about, and
No, I mean Frank Lampard, as you know, well, we all know, arriving in the box at the right, if the ball's not coming in there, Frank Lampard doesn't score.
yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it was great watching that season, and I can remember, I think it was New Year's Day, I think, or whatever, when we played at Liverpool. It was freezing cold. I don't know how the hell I got there, but I got there, and I think it was Joe Cole came off the bench and scored, and we won.
Yeah.
And again, that team had a really good balance to that team, I felt, and obviously at the back, your John Terrys and your Carvalhos and all them, you're not going to beat that. You know what I mean? John was just, he was just, I don't know, he had this ability, I don't know, about him where he just seemed to be in the right place at the right time all the time, but that's not luck, that is a real ability,
Yeah.
and a defensive brain, if a shot went in, it was him blocking it,
Yeah.
and all these things don't get noticed that, that often, but it is now, because when you take John Terry out of the team,
Yeah. I see him play as a real young lad, and Desire and his mate Frank LeBeuf, I think it was. And he actually played. I think they might have played 3 centre halves this day or something.
Yeah.
And he got them both out of trouble. He was about 17.
Yeah.
He was better than them two.
Yeah.
And he was a World Cup winning captain. He was the absolute best. There's no doubt about it. They'll never see another John Terry.
No, I totally agree, Alan. He was exceptional, and I think that.
And he played with a wonky knee half the time.
Yeah,
he had a wonky knee.
Yeah, and he improved his distribution unbelievably.
Yeah.
I've seen him hit balls from sort of left to right, off of one side, and then right to left off the other. He improved so much.
Yeah.
But we always talk about your creative midfield players, your wide players who go past people, and your centre forwards who score goals. But we very rarely talk about the exceptional centre half like John Terry was. Like you said just now, you can't replace John Terry, never.
No.
Never.
No. It's going back to seeing Van Dijk get 3 clear headers the other day. That would never happen against John Terry.
The way that they mark or don't mark, it fascinates me. I'm watching Walker, who's an international player, trying to mark him, and he's got distance. It must be at least 2 or 3 meters between the two of them. How the hell is he going to beat him in the air? He's never. He's got to be up against him.
Yeah.
I always taught my defenders to always have your arm up, one of your arms up, so you could feel the guy you're marking. So if he pulled off, you could go with him. If you pulled him, you're stopping him. You're not letting him go across you. I don't see anything like that. Nothing. I think defending is an art, and I think that is being, it's been lost a little bit in the way that the game's evolved, because it's all about being great on the ball and doing this and doing that. Well, actually, when the ball comes into your box, you need a John Terry.
Well, it's funny you should say it, Colin, I must say, because you're the first person I've heard say that. I've always said there's an equal art to defending as there is to be a midfield player and attacking, and the art of defending has gone out of our game.
It has.
And mainly since the overseas players have been coming in. And pulling shirts and dragging people and putting their arms around people. They might get away with it in Italy and Spain and all that. But they brought that into, and it's degraded our game. It's become ridiculous,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
And I blame the referees for that. But that's another matter. They should just send it. They should go in the dressing room before and said, anyone grabs anyone round the waist in the box, you're going to get a red card.
Yeah.
There'll be no argument. That's your warning. That's your yellow card now.
Yeah.
Before we go out there.
Yeah,
any of this at dancing, you're off. Because we haven't come to see that. There is an art to defending, as we say.
But also, I also think that, 100%. But I think also when you're working with a back four or back three or whatever, you should never ever feel as if you're defending on your own, because that means that the team is out of shape. You know, and I see that a lot. I see the teams getting stretched, and they're letting players run down channels, which would never happen with us, because we would have someone in that channel and we'd all slot over. You know, and I see it a lot. And I see players isolated defending 1v1. Well, if you're defending 1v1 and you're isolated, there's something wrong. You know, that the shape of the team's not right. And I mean, I watch a lot of football on the telly, but I see it happen week in, week out. And you know, but but anyway, we won't get on to VAR because we'll be here all day.
Oh yeah, we leave it. We don't swear on here, only occasionally. But it's going. I mean, this whole conversation on defenders, it goes to show that when you all boils down, it's common sense, and it's very, very simple. Going back to Don Howe, when Arsenal won the double, they had Pat Rice, Frank McClintock, Peter Simpson, and Bob McNabb.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care what anyone says, none of them were world class.
No.
They were really good players. Pat, I played with Pat. He was a great player, great lad, great captain, terrific what he done. You know, Bob McNabb played left back, mainly right-footed. You know, but George Armstrong done all his defending.
Yeah.
You know, and then Peter Simpson could have played for England if he believed in himself. And then you have Frank McClintock who organised things. You know, and that was all through Don Howe. It was all you know, common sense again. You know, as you say, there's not one man. It was all they played as a unit
together.
And they won the double. And Don Howe, and anyone said, people can say, well, he was at Arsenal. He had all them players. But he done it at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
When they won the FA Cup. You know, he was at Wimbledon. People forgot he done it at Wimbledon that year, and that's how good he was. You know, we all know how good he was, but it's just a pity most of the coaches today couldn't take read his book or whatever.
Well, it's a shame that these guys are not around so as these people could actually see. You know, there was nothing really recorded like it is now. You know, we didn't have anything on the training fields, you know, recording. I mean, you go to Chelsea, and they record every training session, and they've got a well, they call it flying over the air, filming it and everything. Exactly. You know, a drone. And I'm like, gee whiz,
it's just like it, but I think it's like a Sinatra being the best, and you got someone's the best at this and someone's best at that, and you can't copy them. You can't copy. You won't become like them. You couldn't have. You mentioned Don Howe's the passion he had was unbelievable. I mean, he lived and he breathed coaching, and but what I loved about him, afterwards it would, you know, it's go out the window. It was all about social. He was a great fella socially, great fella, would help you out, you know. But then again, he become manager of Arsenal and he couldn't do it. He couldn't do the both, you know.
No, I agree. You know, I've been in a simple, well, exactly the same situation. You know, when you're in love with coaching and you can go and express yourself like he used to, I totally get that, because that's what I was all about. You know, I would 100% sooner be a coach than a manager, because again, you can express yourself, you can get close to the players, and as I said earlier, you know, there was discipline. Didn't have any messing around. You know, it was when we worked, but we tried to make it fun, and we tried to. You know, I always thought that when the players left the training field, A, they should have enjoyed it, but B, they should have learned something as well. You know, and whether you're working with the back four or a midfield player or two, or the strikers or the wide players, whatever, someone's gone off that training field and they've learned something. They've taken that with them, and that will improve us, you know, overall. And that's I've always worked that way, and I've always encouraged my players that I've worked with to play football. You know, enjoy playing football, and as I say, the enthusiasm that you put into your training sessions should come out in the games, and I totally believed in that. You know, and as you know, it's funny that you mentioned Don Howe in the very beginning of this, and I was, like I said, I was fortunate enough to see him, and it just struck me that him and as I say, Steve Harrison were the best two coaches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think you would quite like to have played under a Colin Lee coaching team, wouldn't you, Al?
Well, the way, I thought this morning was going to be about his football career, but it's been about his coaching career, which is terrific, because as I say, my son is a coach, and he has the exact same attitude as you. He has the same passion for coaching as you. And I've said to him, well, you've got to do one thing or the other, because that passion, you can't carry that passion into management, because management's a different ballgame.
Yeah,
you're responsible for people's lives, for their livelihoods, their families, and everything else. When you're coaching, you're responsible for getting the best out of these players for the Saturday, and and improving them as players if you can with them little pieces.
Yeah, you can. As a manager, you it's a different connection as a manager than a coach with the players. Different connection.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've probably taken up far too much of your time, Colin.
I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
No, it's great. It's so good. You're looking so well, mate. I'm so pleased you come on.
Yeah, well, when Tony asked me, I didn't hesitate. I then went on to Googled your site, obviously, because I didn't realise, So.
Well, I was a bit worried when he first told me you're coming out, because I went on my back foot. I went, he's going to give me a bollocking about not saying hello to him at the bridge that night. But with a big so I'm glad it was you anyway.
Yeah, I've got rid of the beard now, Al, so you can recognise me.
Well, next time we'll have a beer together.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be coming up anyway. I'll be coming up in the new year to a couple of games.
All right, mate.
So I'll let you know.
Lovely,
Okay.
Colin.
Well, it's great to have you on, Colin, and maybe we can have you back on again and talk more about your managerial career, because I mean you have plenty of clubs you managed.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and I've got a few stories, I must say.
I'm sure.
It's been a pleasure to be part of your show, and I wish you all the best for a happy Christmas and a
happy
and healthy New Year, but also wish you all the best with the podcast.
And you, and keep away from Fillery.
Yeah, I'll keep. No, I've got to give him a ring. Actually,
I've got to now. If you've jogged my memory, I must call him over Christmas. I must call him.
Oh yeah, give him a shout. Yeah,
I love Mickey. I love him as a lad, and I loved him as a player. He had a go at me one day. He said, "Don't ever say." You half said it. He said, "Don't you ever say I underachieved." I said, "Well, you did, Michael. You did underachieve. You should have been right up there with the best of them. So you've underachieved."
Yeah, he said the same to me, because that's the first thing I said to him and his wife.
So we're on the same line.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Right. Lovely to see you. Cheers, and thanks very much,
Colin.
Don't forget, give me a call.
Right. Yeah.
I'll get your number.
All right, mate. Cheers. Tell them, mate.
Thanks, Colin.
Bye-bye.
Colin.
Bye, pal.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good stuff.